Puerto Peñasco. This small town, tucked away in the northeast corner of Mexico's Sea of Cortez, is the setting for this story. The principal business of the town is fishing. Its small harbour crammed with battered shrimp boats. Maintenance is evidently not a high priority, most likely because the high value of the catch is shipped out of town, leaving little behind for those who caught it. Peñasco, also known as Rocky Point, is a popular destination for visitors from the US who built Spanish-style houses along the sandy beaches that border the Gulf. The mighty Colorado River is but a ghost of its upstream self by the time it reaches the Gulf, where a tidal range exceeding 26 feet gives rise to fascinating tree-like patterns on the tidal flats. These photos, and those that follow, were captured from a Cessna. Just 40 minutes inland of the town lies the Alta Desert Reserve and Biosphere, designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2013. So moon-like that NASA sent astronauts here from 1965 to 1970 to train for their visit to the moon in July 1969. These mountains are an irresistible magnet to those who like to climb such places. My notes say we climbed to the summit of El Pinacate at 3,900 feet. We certainly reached the top of something, but I cannot be 100% sure it was in fact El Pinacate. This is myself and Chuck Guy, whose plane we used to take aerial photos. So what was I doing in this remote spot in 1986, other than wandering around taking photos? Our fledgling operation in Taiwan had run into problems, so when a similar opportunity arose in Mexico, it seemed worth pursuing. As in Taiwan, I was here to oversee the building of a boat. It was a long drive from California, where I had been living while in the US. After crossing the Mexican border at Lukeville, Route 8 led only to Peñasco. The final 36 miles are dead straight. Along the way, crosses marked the site of fatal accidents. My wheels were an elderly Oldsmobile Cutlass, which overheated if the air conditioning was used. A distinct drawback was the temperature routinely more than 110 degrees. Our other means of transport to get here was a Beechcraft Sundowner, in which both my partner Anton and I each had a quarter share, valued at $5,000. Our partners in Peñasco provided this fine building. Larry Drake, the naval architect who had designed our existing Fleming 50, later extended to 55, moved to Peñasco and not only designed a Fleming 48, but also supervised the construction of the tooling. The following photographs illustrate this process. Firstly, the hull lines are transferred from the drawings to full size on the floor in a process called lofting. Frames are created from the lines on the floor, and these are set up on a jig to create the shape of the hull. These frames are then sheathed with plywood. This stage of the process is called the building of the plugs. The plugs will be discarded after being used to create the molds, which form the tooling used to create the parts from which the actual boats are assembled. Here is a photo of Larry with the local crew who built the tooling. And here are Larry with my partner Anton and bearded Chuck Guy, who joined us to supervise the fiberglass work. This photo shows the construction of the deck plug, with the hull plug in the background. Wooden structures can adjust their dimensions according to the weather, so they have to be sheathed in fiberglass to stabilize them. Here, the deck plug has the roof plug added to it, and it is at this point that our storyline has to take a diversion. In April 1988, I caught my heel on the eyebrow above the windshield when jumping down the short distance onto the forward cabin roof. I landed on my side and could not move my left leg without considerable pain. It took me 45 minutes to climb off the deck plug and make my way to the office. I was loaded onto a sheet of plywood in the back of a Datsun pickup and driven 60 miles over bumpy roads to a small hospital to have a pin inserted into my thigh. A few months earlier, in June 1987, Anton had been immobilized by a serious heart attack, so this mishap on my part put the whole future of Fleming Yachts in serious jeopardy. I returned to work 5 days later, on crutches. We built a mock-up of the forward part of the boat to help with the design of the interior. This is the proposed shape of the anchor platform. CL stands for center line. The two main reference points in a boat are the center line and the water line, neither of which are visible. Plugs are coated with putty to make them perfectly accurate and smooth. Muscle power and much sandpaper is used in this laborious process. The dummy planking lines are figured out and engraved onto the hull plug. Flying bridge plug is now built atop the deckhouse roof. The salon windows are drawn onto the deck plug. All the separate plugs are dismantled and all go through the same process of stabilizing with fiberglass, putty, and then mold making. The completed hull plug is coated with many layers of special wax in preparation for making the mold. There are gaps in the photography because I had to travel back and forth between Mexico and Taiwan. Here is the completed hull mold being turned right side up. Over the past 18 months, there had been serious problems bringing in the simple products needed to build the tooling. For example, we had to fly 500 miles round trip to San Diego to pick up sandpaper so the work on the tooling could continue. If we could not get a simple item like sandpaper, there was no possibility that we could reliably import every one of the thousands of components needed to build a complete boat. We already had several customers signed up, and without assured and reliable delivery of parts, we would never be able to meet our personal and legal commitments. All those involved had worked diligently and with skill, so it was with great reluctance the project was abandoned in November 1988. And thus I took my leave of Puerto Peñasco.